This lesson is on compound inequalities. So a compound inequality is formed by joining two inequalities with the word and or. So we just learned about union and intersection of sets. That will come into play as we are working through compound inequalities. So in dealing with an and inequality, you're going to see the word and, like this, where it gives me two separate inequalities separated by the word and. Or you're going to see something written as a three-part inequality, like this, where I've got a constant, generally, on each end, and then an expression in the middle. This means that it's between two values, and we always use less than or equal to. We never go in the opposite direction when you write that as your final answer. An and inequality is where we would find the intersection of sets. So we just got done talking about the intersection of sets, and that means where both inequalities would be shaded. So if these were my two inequalities, x is less than 2 and x is greater than or equal to -3, then where they would both be shaded is between the -3 and +2. So it would include -3 but not +2. That would be the intersection. If we're doing an or inequality, so an or inequality, again, the only way it will be written is to have the or in between. We're going to find the union of two sets, and the union of two sets is where either would be shaded. So again, when we looked at these questions on our last video, we said if this was shaded from -infinity up until 2, and this one's from -3 up until infinity, then either one is going to be shaded all the time. So from -infinity to +infinity. So let's take a look at these. We're going to give the solution set in interval notation and graph. So first thing I'm going to do is just solve as I normally would. X is less than or equal to 4. And x is less than or equal to -1. This is an and question. If you need to do your little thing off to the side to help you to understand which would be shaded, probably a good idea to do so. So this is not my graph. This is just helping me to know what my graph would be. If the first one is x is less than or equal to 4, that would be closed circle on 4 shaded left. X is less than or equal to -1 would be closed circle shaded to the left. This is an and question, and an and question is the intersection. And is the intersection. So I'm looking for where both would be shaded, which looks like from -1 to the left. So my official graph would be a closed circle on -1 shaded to the left. Oops, I did that wrong. Oh, you get the idea. A closed circle shaded to the left would be my graph. My solution set in interval notation would be from -infinity all the way up to -1, including -1. You can never contain infinity. Here's another for us to try. This is an and question because this is the way that it's written. So if it's written in this way, it is an and. In this question, remember, we actually have two inequalities. So when I subtract 5 from the middle, I have to do it to all three places, which gives me -9 is less than 3x is less than or equal to 5. And then I'll divide everything by 3, which means -3 is less than x is less than 5/3. Now, on this one, I don't have to do my crazy little graph to figure out where I should be shading because I know that this always means that it's between two values. So on my graph, it's going to go from -3 up until 5/3, which is 5/3 is not quite 2, which would be about right here, would be a closed circle. And -3 would be an open circle, and it's between those two values. My interval notation would be from -3, open because there's no or equal to 5/3, closed because there is an or equal to. Here's an or question for us to try. Again, when they're two separate questions like that, we just solve each question as we normally would. And this is an or. So my two solutions are that x is less than 3 or that x is greater than 4. Remember that or is where either one is just fine. So using my little trick on my graph, I would say this is in this direction, 4 is in this direction. So where are either of them shaded? Either to the left of 3 or to the right of 4. On the interval notation, I would write that as negative infinity up to 3, union from 4 up to positive infinity. So it's everything except for from 3 to 4. Here's another or question. Again, I'm just going to solve the way I normally would. On this one, when I divide by negative 3, I actually flip that inequality. For my second, I would subtract 4 and then divide by negative 1, again flipping the inequality around. There's an or in between. Using my shortcut, this would be opened and then to the left. This one would be closed and to the right. Where would either one be shaded? From negative infinity up to negative 3, union from negative 2. Whoops, that one should be closed. Sorry about that. Closed because of the or equal to, from negative 2 up to positive infinity. For the next one, I am dealing with some decimals, but it shouldn't change anything. Subtracting 3.1 from each side gives me negative 15.4. And then dividing that by 4.4 gives me negative 3.5. Notice I did not flip the inequality on this one because I divided by a positive. For the second, I would add 9.1 to each side, which gives me 2.8. On this one, I am going to divide by a negative 2.8, which will flip the inequality and make it negative 1. This is an and question, so remember this is where both ands are where both have to be shaded. So using my little shortcut technique, this one would be an open circle shaded left. This one would be an open circle shaded right. So is there anywhere where both is shaded? No, that would be a no solution. There's no place where both would be shaded. There's no intersection of those two sets. One for you to try on your own. So try this question, then press play to check your work. For this one, again, I have to do whatever I do to the middle, I do to both sides. So I'm going to first multiply by negative 3. I'm going to do that in all 3 positions. I want you to notice that right now, these are not pointing in the right direction. We talked about they always had to be less than, but notice what's going to happen when I multiply by negative 3, that's going to flip this inequality to now be less than or equal to, and flip this inequality to now be less than or equal to. So I have negative 6 is less than or equal to p minus 2 is less than or equal to 3. I'll add 2 to all 3 positions, which gives me negative 4 is less than or equal to p is less than or equal to 5. Again, I don't need any shortcuts on my graph. I know it's going to go from negative 4 closed circle to positive 5 closed circle and everything in between because we know it's between 2 values. The interval notation would be negative 4 to positive 5, both closed brackets because they're both or equal to.